Hi, I'm Sarah Maloney, first year at Wayne State University, and I'll be presenting my Project 2 multi-module presentation. And throughout this semester, I'm part of the nursing discourse community, and one of the questions that I came up with is, for my research, is why is there burnout culture in the nursing community? As I started my research, I didn't know where to start. So I came up with a list of these questions. And as I started doing this, I realized some of my questions were too specific. For example, how are hospitals trying to act on the problems like burnout? Well, there are solutions, but the thing is, okay, you find solutions, but then what are the causes? And then that led to some of my other questions, like does that lead to short staffing / long hours? And eventually I was able to format to one question, so I had a broader range of research, so it wasn't just specified to one specific thing. And as you can see, this is my synthesis map with burnout right here. And I was able to compile it into 3 groups, 1 being understaffed, 2 being the environment, and 3 being overworked. For understaffed, NPR stands for nurse-patient ratio, and as of right now, there are more patients that outnumber the nurses, and because of that, it can cause stress, which can lead to low job satisfaction, which may make them feel like quitting. And then I did solutions like more safety and like trying to find better solutions. And then for the environment part, I did like emotional abuse because when you handle patients that treat you unkindly, it can leave an impact on you for like it's something you hold on to, and that leads to accidents and stress and being unhappy. And then being overworked, one of the main things I noticed was bad sleep, and that can cause cardiovascular problems and lead to mistakes. And when you work at a hospital, you can't afford to make mistakes because that's a person you're taking care of. And throughout this presentation, I'll be going into more detail about this. So understaff. So some reasons the nurse ratio is based on hospital expensive. So what that meant basically is like if the hospital is focusing on machines like to help do better surgery, they're not going to think about the nurses that take care of the patients. So that might lead to nurses not getting the best salary, and that might make them unhappy. And then, as I mentioned, low job satisfaction. If you're working at a place that doesn't give you the right amount of pay, of course you're not going to be happy. I mean, yes, you're there because you chose to be there, but you would expect to have a decent salary because you're taking your time and helping these patients. And what does understaffed really mean? As I mentioned, there are more patients than nurses, and because nurses are limited to the patients, that means that they're going to be like overworked, because as I noticed throughout my entire research, all of these are kind of like connected. So then they tried to find some solutions, and one of the things was having a flexible work hours. So yes, you may not be getting the right amount of pay, but if you can work flexible hours, like if you have a family or if you have like a second job, that would be really great, because as a nurse, people don't realize they work 12-hour shifts without breaks and stuff. And not to mention, when it comes to nursing school, it's like it's really hard because you have to study like over 30 hours or more a week, and then you have to think about the debt you're in after school. And these are kind of the solutions to try to attract people to be into nursing, so it doesn't become understaffed. And sometimes we have to deal with patients in a better way, like gratitude. And a way that can help is, for example, be thankful that you're like here and not in that patient's shoes, because that patient's obviously in pain and is miserable, and yes, they're probably going to have a negative attitude, so it's nurses' jobs to help raise their spirits, or or more efficiently just bring them back to normal health. And then the next thing is about the work environment. Like when I say work environment, it's more about the like emotional part of the job. And from my research, I realized there's something called secondary trauma. And so what that basically means is like you are caring for this patient that is in so much pain. Like let's say this patient got in a brutal car accident and you see their bones and blood everywhere. Well, obviously that's going to carry with you and that's going to cause secondary trauma. And emotional abuse is like, well, let's say that patient like always berates you saying, you suck at your job, I want someone new, I don't want you here, like go away. Obviously that's going to take an emotional toll on a nurse, and because the nursing environment is so fast paced, they're not going to have time to recover. They just have to deal with it and move on to the next patient, and that leads them to be unhappy. And when you don't have a happy nurse, you're not going to have a happy patient. Like that saying, a happy wife, a happy life. Well, if you don't have a happy nurse, you're not going to have a happy patient. And then that just leads negative attitude throughout the hospital. And then some of the solutions they recommended was leadership. And so when you have senior nurses who take initiative of finding or trying to relate to new strategies to better cope with burnout, that leads to a trickle effect of where younger nurses, like new people coming into the hospital, will take more effort to get better in being organized and better coping stress management. It may not seem like a big deal, but when nurses deal with this, some bad coping mechanisms might be overeating, drinking, and that just leads to worse health. And then, so that's why there needs to be better ways to cope with work. And then when you do have support and trust and a system of your colleagues that you work with, you're able to solve problems and work together, because without a support system, a nurse will feel by themselves and feels this individual responsibility of being alone. And when you have a community, that takes some pressure off. And then the last thing I found was being overworked. And one of the things was sleeping problems. Yes. Oh, what? It's sleeping problems. Well, it's a big deal because when you have sleeping problems, that can lead to mistakes, and mistakes lead to low productivity, and so you won't get as much work done as fast, or you'll forget things about a patient, and it may not seem like a big deal, but patients are people, and when you make a mistake on a person, it could probably leave an impact. Like if you give a wrong amount of dosage of medicine, that could possibly harm the patient more, and that's not what a nurse is supposed to do. They're supposed to help patients. And what I have here is occupational hazard. By stressing emotional, personal part of the job, all I'm trying to say is this job is really hard, and yes, it's a hazard to the hospital and practice if mistakes are made. So that's why for a nurse, they shouldn't be overworked. And when I mentioned cardiovascular disease, it can lead to like high cholesterol, high BMI, just leads to worse health in the long run if you keep being a nurse and you don't fix things like this. And some of the solutions I found out was promoting self-care, and one of those things might be trying to take a day and use mechanisms of coping strategies, as mentioned before, such as meditation and exercise, to release stress, and then aim for better sleep. The only way you can get better sleep if we can fix the problems before us, such as understaffing in the environment. So you can see throughout this presentation, all these things are together. Most of the solutions are pretty much the same, of better coping mechanisms, and as understaffed environment and overworked, you still have the same kind of like emotional problems like of stress and stuff. And and stress, and that can be due to so many things. So it's kind of like all these problems are intertwined with one another, and that's what I found in my research. And these are my citations through all my resources. And the last thing I would like to mention before I end this is for a hypothetical situation. So why should we care about this? Why did I invest time in this? Well, the issue is pretty clear right now with this pandemic. For example, like everyone knew nurses were understaffed, overworked, as mentioned many times, but it wasn't seen until the pandemic happened, because when there was limited amount of nurses and resources, taking care of those patients obviously caused an impact on them, because they saw so many people die, seeing so many people not get resources such as ventilators, and it's sad. And why I bring this up is because I guess we can apply this to an hypothetical situation, because we can discuss about, okay, with all this emotional impact and physical stress, how will this impact the nursing community and the future nurses, like as like freshmen right now, or future classes to want to study to be nurses? Are they willing to have all this abuse? And abuse, when I mean that, I just mean like emotional stress. Have all this to help patients and to go through school, like, is it worth it? And I guess we can do studies such as impacting about nurses and see if that does indeed impact the decline or increase in nursing students, and also to see if nursing students who are currently studying in a pandemic right now, if they still are on that path to being a nurse due to all this new like evidence of, like, not new evidence, but just new things that are seen based on this pandemic. I would like to thank everyone for your time, and I will appreciate all the feedback I get.